Okay, it is 9 o'clock. Today is Friday, September 13th, 2024, and this is the Governing Board Workshop. I call this meeting to order. Let me get to my agenda. We have a quorum. We're missing one member who is out at a funeral, but we have everybody else here. If you will stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Okay, first thing we're going to do is read a statement. This will be read in every meeting that the board does and every meeting that the committees do. It's a little bit different for the committees, but the message is the same. The governing board conducts all of its meetings in compliance with Arizona open meeting laws per Arizona Revised Statute 33-1804 and in concert with RCSCW bylaws, policies, and standing rules. Parliamentary procedures, as outlined in the most recent edition of Robert's Rules of Order, will be followed in board meetings as appropriate, consistent with Bylaw 3.07, entitled Procedures for Owner-Member Meetings, and Standing Rules number 2 and number 3. All questions and comments are to be directed to the governing board president. All comments are entertained at the discretion of the governing board president. Speakers shall state their name and member number and speak in a courteous manner. The governing board president may limit commentary time and the number of commentators or speakers on any issue. The governing board president also may redirect commentary at individual agenda items to the general guest comments agenda line item, except when the board has discussed the agenda item and a formal vote is to be taken. All fire and room safety precautions and regulations are strictly obeyed at all meetings per the guidance of the Arizona Fire and Medical Authority. The governing board reserves the right to adjourn any meeting if the safety of the board, meeting attendees, or others is deemed at risk, or if there is too much disruption to continue. After one verbal warning by the president, the board also reserves the right to ask any meeting attendees to leave any meeting should their behavior be deemed dangerous or unacceptable. Disciplinary action may follow. This is a workshop meeting, which means that it is used for discussion of topics within the committee and within the audience. There will be no votes taken today. So the first order of business is the approval of the meeting minutes from our June 14th, 2024 Governing Board Workshop. Are there any changes or additions to those minutes? Seeing none, they are accepted as written. First order of business, 3.01, is the introduction of Mr. Stephen Erno, who is our new general manager. He's been with us since September 3rd, I believe is the date, so he's been with us 10 days. He's made it this far, and he's indicated he's willing to stay. So, Stephen, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, I'm having a great time. It's 9 days in or 10 days, whatever it is, but so far so good. I haven't broken anything that I'm aware of, and everyone's been amazing. I do want to thank the board for their giving me this opportunity to be here in this role. It's fantastic. It's such a great community. And I've been thoroughly impressed with not only the way that we are organized, the way the boards and the committees operate, but also the way the staff is very competent, tenured staff, and the facilities are fantastic. A lot of which is what drew me into this position was seeing what a great community this is. So excited to be here. Looking forward to doing some fun things here and moving us continue moving us in a forward direction. But just happy to be here, happy to interact with the residents already. I've had some comments and some interactions with folks during the meetings, so happy to just be part of this wonderful community and be a part of what we can make even better. So thank you for this opportunity and looking forward to getting to know everybody.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Okay, and with that, any questions from the committee, or the board, sorry? Any questions from the audience? Okay, I'll take that as I will move to the next item. The next item is 3.02 June year-to-date financial review after a formal audit, and that's Terry West.
Hi, I'm here to give you the update on the CLA financial audit for fiscal year 24 that ended in June. Right now, the audit is in the detail review process with CLA. They said we should have any findings and drafts back to us the week of September 23rd. And then CLA will have a representative at the BNF committee meeting on October 15th to do a presentation on the audit.
Okay, any questions for Terry? Audience questions? Okay, you're off the hook for that one, Terry.
Thank you.
Yours,
That's good.
yeah. Minimum wage update, that's also Terry, 3.03.
Well, as most of you know, there were two initiatives out there for signatures before July 1st. One was to raise the minimum wage to $18 an hour beginning January 1st of 25. And then there was a superseded initiative that would raise the minimum wage $1 per hour plus CPI for the next 3 years, essentially getting minimum wage to be over $18 an hour, which with as many employees that we have on minimum wage or tied to minimum wage, that would have been a huge increase in our budget. So the group did get enough signatures to put it on the ballot for November, but in the wake of some legal actions that were coming down the pipeline for them, Raise the Wage Arizona pulled it from the ballot. So with that, all the staff are continuing on with all the projects that were in the capital budget and the operating budget for this year.
Great, thank you. That's great news. Thank you, Terry. Any questions for Terry? Audience? Okay, thanks, Terry. 3.04, Patrick. This is the discussion of the Dave Arendt golf sign.
All right, good morning, everyone. Pat O'Hara, Golf Operations Manager. On the screen, you can see a sign that we have over at Grandview Golf Course. The Crooked Putter is advertising there, and you see a blank space to the right. That was the previous tenants to the golf lab. What we're recommending is to replace that with a DA Golf Lab sign on both sides of that particular sign. And the cost on this is going to be close to $1,200. Dave Ahrens will pick up the tab. We're just looking to add that advertisement to the sign.
Okay, and the reason the board is getting this is there's a policy that says that the board has to approve any signage that comes out there. So I'm going to make a motion that the motion is that the board approve the request to put up the Dave Ahrens Golf Lab sign outside of the
Grandview Golf
Grandview, thank you. I used to live in Glenview, so Grandview Golf Course. So that's the motion. Can I get a second? Yes. Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Forgot. I got ahead of myself. Sorry. So we'll take it under advisement and do it at the regular meeting.
Very good.
Thank you. Sorry
you.
about that. Oh, any questions? Any questions for Pat? Wow, I messed myself up. Go ahead, Dick.
So Pat, is Dave Ahrens, what's the relationship between he and Sun City West?
He leases the golf lab, that space, which is adjacent to the Grandview Pro Shop, on a monthly basis from us to conduct business. Yeah.
Okay. The other question, and this is very minor, should something happen that he decides to leave, do we have to pay to take that sign down?
In the past, we haven't. In fact, what you see, that blank space, I think was done in-house, if I'm not mistaken.
So then, does he pay us a rent every month?
He does.
Thank you very much. That's all I wanted to know. Thank
Okay.
Jolene?
Will you have a prototype of what the sign's going to look like at all?
We do.
You do?
There's a couple options that Dave and us, the organization, are looking at, so we haven't finalized that yet.
Okay, great.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Any questions from the audience? David? You can
David
give us your
Bennett.
name and rec card number and sign in,
Rec
please.
card number is 137887, and again, Dave Bennett. Question, if he's, wants his advertising on there, how come the board is putting in money? Shouldn't he pay for, pardon?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, Patrick said that the Dave Aarons will pay for it. The cost is $1,200, but he will pay for it.
Oh, he'll pay for it. Okay, thank
Okay,
you for the
thank you.
clarification.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Christine.
Just to further clarify as well, I heard that we will do the installation with in-house folks, so it will be effectively, other than our own person, we're not? That he's paying for the cost, as well as the cost of install?
Correct. The way.
All right, and if it's removed, we would remove it in-house?
Correct.
Thanks. But there's no effect financially to our
No,
operation?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, board or audience? Okay, thank you, Patrick. Okay, Committee 3.05, committee updates. This would be from Properties and Golf. Kay Williams is not here. She is to discuss the tours for the Properties Committee. Those dates are September 24th, October 1st, October 15th, which is Kuntz. The first two are Palm Ridge and Beardsley. The 15th is Kuntz. October 22nd is Upper R.H. Johnson, and October 29th is Lower R.H. Johnson. All of those begin at 6:45, and they will be meeting in front of the fitness center for each of those starts. The primary audience for those tours are the Properties Committee members. We've been invited, and we can attend, but they will be the primary ones. So, but we are welcome to attend that. Rudy, do you want to bring us up to date on golf tours?
Yes, sir, thank you. I'm Rudy Grum, Chairman of the Golf Committee, and we had our first meeting yesterday afternoon. The tour schedule was discussed, and we basically reached consensus that it will be best to tour all the courses while they're closed. That gives us an ability to see a lot more items without interfering with any golfers. And beginning at the end of this month, we will go into an overseeding process which will last for about 2 months, which gives us the opportunity to tour all 7 courses. So between all the committee members, we agreed that it would best to tour in the afternoons, and I am meeting with Mr. Todd Patty on this coming Wednesday morning to set the dates, and we'll just go right through the progression of one course probably every week. The tour is anticipated to take an hour to an hour and a half, and I will let the board know once we set the dates for each individual tour. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. Any questions for Rudy? Okay, thank you. Moving right along, Sports Pavilion Chairperson Dick Rhodes will give us a Lizard Acres update.
Thank you, Jack. The Sports Pavilion and the Bowling Committee actually had our first meeting on this last Wednesday. Just as a point of information, we have 7 new members on the committee. We brought back 2 from last year in the interest of continuity, but we have 7 new fresh eyes to look at our activity this year. We're really excited that you know by now that the $225,000 for renovation has been approved. I'm not going to steal any of Carl's thunder because we already heard this, but we're hoping sometime in April-ish that we will have some we'll turn the first shovel over and get some work done. I don't know how long that's going to take. If whatever time I say will be wrong, so I'll leave that up to Carl, but 4 months at 3, 4, 5, he's holding fingers up for me, so. So we've got the new sound system has been installed, and that's been a really positive thing. Something I've been really excited about is that our new manager of the bowling alley, Gary Zarek, has been very active, and he's very enthused about his new job, and it's very evident with some of the things that have happened in this very short period of time that he's been in there. If you remember, we also have billiards and pool in there. We have a systematic plan now to replace the felt and perhaps bumpers if necessary on our pool tables. 5 have already been done. We've got 5 more scheduled. We've got some new cues coming in, pool cues coming in. So, and that's, we're going to continue to look at that and continue to kind of refresh and bring the pool tables back up to spec. Our fall leagues are beginning to form. I don't know what I need to say about that. For all of you bowlers, you know that you need to check in online and such. We're getting quotes, and we're doing research for the new pin setters, the underground ball track, new gutters, gutter caps, foul lights, and masking units. If you want to know what they are, talk to Gary in the back of the room, because he can explain in detail. It's a relatively expensive proposition, but it's one that we have on the reserve study. So the money is there, it's on the reserve study. It's just a question of do we want to do this now? Now, we'll probably talk more about that at a later date, but the pin setters are aged and we're having trouble finding parts, and so the rest of the story will unfold. There's 2 new oiling machines, and I think that's it. We did go through our financials, and we did go through workload, but it didn't really shed a lot of light onto anything. We're so early into the year, and the bowling alley was closed for 2 weeks for annual maintenance and cleaning. So to that degree, you know, I don't think the numbers or the workload really has much relevance. So unless anyone has questions, Mr. President Leary?
Any
That's
questions for Dick? Any questions from the audience? Oh, you guys are going easy on me in my first meeting. So, you just jinxed it. Okay. Then with that, we'll move to the next item, which is 3.07, where we will talk about the governing board vice president procedure. With the resignation of Alan Schlemmer, who was our vice president, we have to elect a new one. We will go through the process of nominations, and we will have a special meeting following our September 19th governing board regular meeting. Oh, it's before the meeting? Okay, so it's before the meeting. So we will elect a new vice president. I will not open the floor to nominations at this point, so we will take nominations beginning that day, since one of our members is not here today. So everybody will have an equal chance to nominate somebody or nominate themselves. So any questions on that? Okay. So we'll go with that. And then, as Karen reminded me, it is next Thursday, September 19th, we will have that election. It will be handled as a formal election. It will be a secret ballot, and we'll have tellers who will collect the pieces of paper. So it will be a formal election. Any questions on that? Nope. Okay, next item on the agenda, 3.09, is a general petitioning discussion. You should have the document in your handout that the there is a, we've had formal petitioning guidelines in the past, and these are for petitioning for everything except our governing board election process. That's handled separately and differently. But this is for civic guidelines for people who want to have petitions signed for things like to put on a election ballot, those kinds of things. Because we do have people who want to come here and use our facilities and get the signatures of our members. In the past, Karen has been the focal point for all of that. She managed those guidelines. She handled the people who came on board and wanted to petition on our facilities. After several discussions with our attorney, the process that are being recommended and open for discussion now is that she will no longer be the focal point for that. Instead, we will abide by the Arizona state petitioning laws. And what will happen, what the change for us is that by removing Karen from that process, she is no longer she would not be what is called a state actor, where she would be effectively become somebody who enforces state laws and regulations. That just does not work. It's something that we need to avoid a lot. So what will happen instead is when petitioners want to go to a particular location, any of our 4 rec centers, for example, or the golf courses, but primarily the rec centers, they will need to check in with the facility lead, and the facility lead will have a set of instructions that they will hand over to this person. If there are any issues with the petitioner and the way that the signatures are being gathered, if it's a argument, discussion, whatever, and it becomes something that can't be handled, then MCSO is to be called, and MCSO, as a official state actor, will handle the issue. So that's what's on the table here. So I'm going to open it up to discussion by the board. Who wants to start? No discussion. So you're all good with this? Yeah. Okay. That's okay. You go ahead, Jolene. You're first.
So will we have a handout? I mean,
Yes.
for each of the leads, right, to give to the petitioners?
Yes.
But those petitioners are going to probably end up coming to our main office first, I would assume, to find out what they have to do? How does that work usually, Karen?
Generally, people show up and
So what Karen said is that the petitioners typically do not come to the main office. They just go to the particular facility and start petitioning. And in the past, what has happened is the lead will find them, ask them if they've been vetted by Karen, and if not, then they are directed to Karen. This will remove that entire step. Yes, Dick.
Thank you. I've read this several times, and I think the thing that concerns me is the position that we're putting the leads in. So my perception, if I were a lead and this were passed down to me, I would have the sense that I'm now going to be the enforcer. Well,
No.
it reads that way, and it reads that the lead will be the one that will be between whoever the petitioner is and and sons in the organization. So that means that I think we're going to have some pretty comprehensive training for our leads.
There will be training, there will be handouts. They are not the enforcers. The only thing that they do if there is an issue is they call MCSO, 911, and that's what they do. So they are not the enforcer. Just as Karen was the enforcer now, we're not asking the leads to do that.
But if I would think, and if I were the general manager, that I'd want to know when and if someone actually calls, the sheriff. So, I mean, I just, somehow this just doesn't fit with me, but I'm not sure if, I'd have to see how it's going to work. I just feel that we're placing a burden of responsibility on the leads that I think is asking a lot of.
Then where else would we put it?
I don't know. That's why we're having this discussion.
Okay. Well, then, okay. So if it's not on the leads and it's not on Karen, where would you suggest we put it?
I don't have an answer for that, but I just want to share with you, the point of this discussion was to have our input on this. And my input is that it feels to me that we are putting additional, it'll be perceived that we're putting additional responsibility on the leads.
Okay. Christine?
To that point, I'd love to hear from Stephen. How do you and the staff, have you had a chance to discuss it, and what do you feel about this change?
Thank you. So here's what I would say is that I've not had a chance to have much discussion yet, first of all. But my initial reaction to that is I understand and I appreciate, Director Rose, what you're bringing forward. At the same time, I would say that when you have these folks that are out there doing this, yes, it can create a situation that sometimes can get passionate. And so having the person there at the facility that can actually see that. Now the challenge and respond to that is, I think, is not a bad thing necessarily. The challenge, and I think to your point, Director Rose, is that then they kind of become the person that is in the middle of that. So we'll have to figure out, if we go this route, what training that looks like and at what point, and who actually decides when we need to call MCSO. Because to me, I would look at it as like, well, if it's being a disruption and they're creating and they're disturbing the peace, then and it's on our facilities, on our property, then yes, we should be intervening with that, regardless of if they're petitioning or whatever they're doing. They should be, our staff would need to be doing that, taking that action. What I don't want is for our staff to be the ones that has to decide, when the sheriff gets called. I mean, and part of that can be, to some extent, depending on, obviously they can do that, but it might be that if there's a bad interaction happening, the recommendation from our staff can be to, and because the resident's going to be saying, I don't like them here, and they're being this or being that. I wouldn't want our staff to have to make that determination. Some of that's going to need to be put back on the resident. Hey, listen, if you are having this challenge, you're welcome to call MCSO. Now, if it's creating a disturbance for us and other residents at our facilities, then I would say the staff needs to say, okay, it's time for me to call MCSO. So it's going to be a mixture of both, I think. I would hope, and maybe I'm wrong, that there wouldn't be a lot of these situations. Because in general, when people are collecting petitions, it's either you want to sign it or you don't. And people are either, if they want to sign it, they typically will stop and they'll sign because they agree. But unfortunately, in today's political climate, there is the challenge of someone just doesn't like even what they're trying to petition, and they want to get into a confrontation with that petitioner. So I get that. So again, we're gonna have to work through, if this is the direction the board wants to go, we'll have to work through what that training looks like and kind of defining. But I don't know that you can strictly define it either, because it's going to be situational based.
Right. If I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Christine.
I'm a darn broken record on the what versus how, and so bear with it. But again, this is something that I think we all have responsibility, because there's a component of what we feel that we need some sort of a policy or it's both policy and procedure. I think what maybe, and I'm not going to, ever try to speak for Director Rhodes, but what troubles me more about this is not the what, but the how. What's the procedure? What happens? What kind of training do we do, all of us as residents and staff? I don't have an answer for that either, Director Rhodes, but I just wanted to say that I think what may be troubling us all more is the procedure and not the, what needs to happen. Perhaps we focus first on the what and then leave it to a collection of us. It may be something we collaborate on to determine the right procedure. Just a suggestion.
So basically, wait. I have to be recognized. I have to recognize you first. So I know you're new. So, okay, Dennis. Okay, so basically,
Basically, this sets policy, and then we're going to go to a procedure. This is the what, we're going to go to the how.
well, the board will do the what, operations will do the how. Yeah, Rudy?
I'd like to follow up on what Director Piaskowski started out with. This is a policy basically internal to us. What gets this process started with the person that comes in from the outside that wants to do the petitioning? How do they know either to go to member services or to contact the various leads of the given building that there actually is a policy? And the other thing is, we're kind of in a unique situation. Our area is actually all common grounds and all, but it is still private property. Are we going to have to get into a situation where we have to start posting signage, letting people that petitioning is or isn't allowed, or that whatever? Because what you're doing here is, it's sort of an internal policy to us, but at some point you're saying we could call in the sheriff's department and they really don't enforce our rules. Only we do. Now, if it's disturbing the peace or trespassing, that's a different issue. But I'd like to kind of know how the whole process gets started with a person that comes in from the outside.
So experience has shown that, as Karen stated earlier, the petitioners just show up and they just start petitioning. So there is no policy other than what has happened, and it's not even a policy. In the past, is they've been directed to talk to Karen. So what this is trying to do is to say that we have a policy on how to petition on our property. And this has been vetted by our attorney, and what he has advised us is that, yes, we will have to put signs up that indicate common areas, and that we are, in order to do this, we have to abide by Arizona Revised Statute 33-1808, which allows petitioning in common areas. So we would have to define what those common areas are and then designate them with signs. And like we've done with our golf courses, we would reference the particular Arizona Revised Statute that gives us the authority to call in MCSO and gives them the authority to enforce the policy in effect for us. So that's the way that would work. Jolene?
I see Carl up there, and I'm just wondering, we have leads, and then we have a supervisor lead, right? So if,
Jolene, I would like to hold that until after the board has finished, before I open it up to other
Okay.
discussion.
well, yeah,
Go ahead.
So are we really talking about trespassing then? Because if we define what our property is, that anything outside of that is actually governed by Arizona statute. So if we declare this block here is our property, that means that the person that wants to petition cannot do it in our private property. That if they do, then it becomes trespassing.
It's a little more granular than that, in that as a planned community, we have common areas. So what we have to do, it's all our property. It's all our property. That's not under discussion. What is under discussion are the boundaries for petitioning within our common areas. So we would have to define a common area. So for example, the area outside of this building all the way over to membership, that's a common area. And we would have to have signs defining what those boundaries are. You know, what other, you can think of other common areas might be outside of the library, outside of each of our recreation centers, something like that. But we would have to define that. We would not allow them inside the buildings to petition. So, yes.
One and final comment. So once we define the boundaries, then anything outside of that is a breach of that, and it's trespass.
That is correct.
Okay, and that's what I think that the whole basis is on. The onus of responsibility is on us to define the boundaries. And once we do that, then it's just a simple, if you've breached that, then you're trespassing. And then we just have to have whatever business process that's been developed that responds to the trespassing.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the board? Okay, Christine?
Just a suggestion, really. This is something that may warrant more discussion than we could do in any given workshop. In order to move it forward, might you consider a working group comprised of both ops and perhaps board or committee representatives to make a recommendation?
Again, I'm going to look at the what versus how.
Right.
The question before us here is we have a situation where petitioners come onto our property.
Exactly.
At this point, they are allowed to go anywhere. And the question is, do we need a policy for managing petitioning? So we're looking at the what.
Okay, as long
At
as
this
that's all
point,
we're looking
that we're looking at the what. This is an example of what the what would look like. So I think a discussion with, you know, a working group, I think, is unnecessary, because we can say, you know, this
Understood.
is the what.
So
and
we will
can
vote
say-
simply on a
the
what.
On
Do
the
we need a
what.
policy? And then the next steps would be.
Yeah, and then
Right,
we would.
thank you.
Then we would hand that over to operations and say, by a certain date, this has to be in place. Yes, Karen? Okay, Tim?
Yeah, we already have a policy for petitioning, both for public elections and for board-specific elections. Really, all this does is define common areas. That's all it does. So I don't know that we need to discuss it anymore. It's
Yeah.
basically cut and dried.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I suggest we move it to the general meeting to vote on it.
Okay, thank you. I have to get comments from the floor. Carl, you've been very patient.
Thank you. Good morning, directors. Carl Wilhelm, Facilities Operations Manager. We were provided this document during the general manager's internship, so senior operations has seen this, and we've had a lot of questions. So I'm very thankful for the discussions that have happened up here today, because I thought maybe this might get fast-tracked. So I am asking, Mr. President, that you defer this to the general manager for a much deeper dive and allow us to make best decisions on what staff. The key points that I'd like to point out is history says that, yes, there are some petitioners that just arrive. History says there are some that are organized and actually come and ask first, and Karen most likely has addressed them in the past. Who is that key person? Another key point is leads are not here all day long. They generally, their operational hours are from either 6 to 2:30 or 6:30 to 3. So in the afternoons, the last shift of the day, if you will, there might not be representation here for a lead to hand off a card, and I certainly wouldn't want to see that handed off by a monitor. So these are the discussions that I really think that staff needs to take into consideration. I could think of a few other points, but because we've had a lot of questions here. I think that'll lead to our questions and your questions being blended together and answered. But please give us the opportunity to rework this document before anything is moved forward.
Thank you for your comments, Carl.
Thank you.
However, because this is a policy, this is up to this board to determine the policy. The implementation and the questions that you've raised are very valid, and you'll need time to implement that. So whatever happens in terms of how this policy is approved and implemented, we will discuss at that time. But for right now, can I have consensus to move this to our regular meeting for a vote as a policy to handle the what?
I guess I'm confused, Jack, because we have a policy. The only thing that's missing is the identification and definition of where the space is. We know what's going to happen. You know, the policy's there. Tim has pointed out that, you know, we have that. It's in existence. I don't think anybody's quibbling over that. And we're not quibbling over, you know, the latitude that the petitioner has where they can stand or where they can be. We just have to define and identify what those spaces are that we consider.
And that's exactly what this would be for. Tim?
Yeah, these common areas are actually defined in the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act. And there's a certain term for it, but it basically means any area that is reasonably accessible by the public, which is what our common areas are. Those are classified as public areas in the ADA. It seems to me that just defining the areas is what this does. But I do think that there is a valid question as to who is the enforcer of this. And I do think that might need some more discussion between you and the general manager.
Thank you. So the one thing I would say to Carl's point is that probably the only thing that I would like to see different in this is if we don't specify facility leads and let us figure out who that would be. It may end up being facility leads, but it may be that we figure out some other mechanism. You know, the board's policy as to where this can happen absolutely is, you know, for you all to have that discussion. And some of it is even being dictated by state statute and some of these things. So that's one thing I would ask is if we can just make that to that, and you can even make it that the general manager will determine, or I don't know, however you want to change that, we can figure out the logistics of that, but if we can just maybe look at that.
I think that's fair. Okay, so then, so please silence your phones. Okay, thank you. So then with that, do we want to have that discussion now? Because I think, as Tim has pointed out, this is really just defining where, and the common areas are actually defined in this document. It's just a matter of agreeing that we have to define them, and then we will have to put up signage. And then, of course, there will be some procedure that will have to be done for operations in terms of how to handle those types of things, violations and those sorts of things. Because right now, our only enforcer is Karen. And by putting her into the position of being a state actor, that puts a lot of pressure on her and us that we should not be in those positions. So we need to address that. So yes, Christine.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the change that the general manager has proposed, I think it becomes more of a what versus a how, because I think that takes, as long as we say the intention here is to designate where the petitioners, like, we just need to be a little bit more specific. What is the purpose of this? We can take out the specifics of who will enforce it, who's responsible, and say our intention is therefore to define common areas. There's nothing in here that says we have to put up a sign or there shouldn't be, because again, that's an implementation decision. So if we remove some of those specifics and make it really policy-driven, I think we'll go a lot further. We can then turn it over to the team, to the general manager and staff, to advise on how long, what's the cost of implementation, and come back to us with that. That's just my suggestion.
We do need to put up the signs in order to have MCSO enforce it. So that's.
I do understand that, but again, where and how and what it
Oh,
says is not up
absolutely,
for us.
absolutely, yeah. What do they look like? What do they say? Absolutely, that has to be decided. I'm fine with removing the facility leads reference. Everybody's okay with that? Okay, so if with that removed, can we move this to the governing, the regular, yeah, Karen? We will replace it with language saying that the designated person or persons will contact MCSO. So rather than facility leads, it will say something to that effect. Yes, Stephen?
So if you want to just say general manager or designee.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to be voting, we're just going to get consensus. Yeah, in voting day, yeah. We'll get the wording squared away. By then, yes. Okay. So with that recommended change, can we get consensus on moving this forward to the governing board regular meeting for a vote? So the change that is in the third, I guess it's the fourth paragraph inside the gray box there, is that rather than a reference to facility leads, it will say something to the effect of general manager or designee, or it begins with RCSCW. So the general manager, so it's something, so it's raising it up in terms of not putting it may end up being the facility leads, but for the purposes of this policy. And I think that's a fair change. Yeah. Yes.
I need to make
Director Rhodes.
I need to make another comment here. You know, this isn't a policy. We've got a policy. This is a business process. This whole thing is being driven by, it's inappropriate. We think it's inappropriate to have Karen be the enforcer here, or the decision maker on when we draw the line. We already know what the parameters are of where people can stand. We already have the policy. So this is really dabbling with the process of who's going to do what. And I don't think that's a place for the governing board to act. I think that we've turned ourselves into a corkscrew here, and we're talking in circles. And I think that we know what's got to be done. And I just think we're making more out of this than it really needs to be.
Director Hurley.
Yes. We already do have two policies, as I said before. I believe it's L7 and 13. L04. Really, all that needs to be done is for the general political petitioning common areas needs to be added to those two policies. That'll take care of all this.
Okay. So then what I'm hearing is that we should look at, what is it, 13 is the civic one?
13 is the association specific. 4 is
Okay,
the
so it's
civic.
4 is we want to look at, is incorporating language into 4 from this, and then using this perhaps as the basis for the general manager to create a policy or an operational procedure.
Well, actually, I think you should include it in both.
In both?
Both.
Okay, okay. Okay, put it in both. So based upon that, the discussion is different, that we should do that first rather than have a discussion on the 19th at our regular meeting on this particular document. So is that?
Jack?
Yes, sir.
If you would like, I will add this to 4 and 13 and present it at the general meeting.
Okay, at their regular meeting?
Right.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you, Director Hurley. Okay. And then we can vote on it then. Okay, is that acceptable to everybody? Okay, great, thank you. That was a great discussion. Agenda item number 310, which is references a governing board statement, facility usage. Back in June of 2011, the governing board at that point made a statement that, to paraphrase, basically says that the facilities are for the use of Sun City West residents and their occasionally invited guests. There has been much discussion online and amongst people about how and when our facilities are used, and do we allow outsiders to come in, and if we do, under what conditions. So I'd like to have a discussion of how do we address that? Should we take that statement from June 11th, and which was incorporated into the RRPs, portions of it anyway, and have that as a policy? And we don't have to decide this today, but I would like to just throw that out there so that we can start to talk about that, because I know there has been a lot of discussion about how outsiders use our facilities and that kind of thing. So I don't necessarily know that we want to do it today, but I think I will get that text and verbiage to all of you so that you can see it, and then we'll have a discussion with it, maybe not at our regular meeting, but maybe next month at our workshop, if that's agreeable. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Okay. Any questions on either of those two discussions that we just had, petitioning and facility usage from the audience? I kind of neglected to go over that. Nick, Mr. Turner?
Hi, Nick Turner, 131829. I agree with Director Hurley that putting the major text of that document into the existing policies is a good idea, because all we're doing is actually just clarifying what are the existing policies. But I think you need to say something like that obeying reasonable instructions from a member of Recreation Centre staff who are trying to enforce the policies is required, and failure to do so will result in the calling of the sheriff. You just need some wording like that in there, just to say that these are policies, these are rules, they will be enforced. And that enforcement will be done by the sheriff's office if reasonable instructions are not followed.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Anybody online? Okay. Okay, with that, then we'll go to board director comments. Dennis, I'll start with you. I'm Director Horvath.
Thank you, Mr. President. None at this time. Just glad to be part of the board.
Okay, thank you. Director Grom.
No comments, just glad to be here.
Director Novello.
Get well soon, Alan Schlemmer. No further comment.
Director Piaskowski.
I just want to give a shout out to Russ. I love the awnings at membership. They look really nice. And we included that other window, which is great. And Carl, they look really nice.
Director Rhodes.
No, I just want to, again, and I've said it once before, to tell you how excited I am to be on the Sports Pavilion and Bowling Committee. We have some tremendous people, starting with Gary Zarek and all of the members of the committee. So I'm just very pleased about that. And I'm pleased to have this be my third and final year on the governing board, by the way.
Okay, Director Hurley.
Yeah, I do have a comment, and it seems like every time we have a meeting, I end up getting more work to do. I thought without a committee, this was going to be a breeze. That's it, thanks.
We appreciate you stepping up and raising things for us to do, which means us is the royal us. I have a comment. My comment is actually a message I received from Director Schlemmer, former Director Schlemmer, that he wanted me to read at the workshop. Before I say that, he did say that he is making good progress from his injuries. They are very serious. The facial injuries he had are healing, but he does have a number of other areas that he has to work on. He has been cleared to do some pool walking, so you may see him out in the community. If you do, please wish him well. But I'm going to read his statement. And he says, Terry and I are grateful and appreciate the kindness, support, and encouragement we have received over the past 3 weeks since my bicycle accident. We cannot express enough how it has helped. I especially want to thank the board, Karen, the staff, and the committee members for all their support. The true hero has been my wife. She has been my rock. She was at my side in the trauma center and has been my superstar in every day that has followed. The decision to step away from the board was not easy, but it was the right thing to do. The board deserves the full attention of each of its members. For the next several weeks and months, my focus needs to be on getting better. In my time on the board, I came to appreciate even more the dedication of the board and of all the folks that make this community work. While we may not always agree, there is no doubt in my mind that every one of us deeply cares about Sun City West. Vigorous debate is essential, but when all is said and done, we must remember that we are also friends and neighbors bound together by the privilege that we are part of the greatest retirement community in the world. Thank you for your care, concern, and understanding. Get well, Alan. Any comments from the audience? Please come up to the microphones, sign in, and state your name and rec card number.
Bill Weaver, 124087. I have an issue with the CC&R department, and I think it's very similar to what you just went through with the petitioning. CC&R has always been a complaint-driven. Now they have what they've referred to as their building permit program, and they aren't following their own procedures for it. My wife and I were caught up in that when we built a pergola. We've received 2 letters from them demanding information from us regarding our project. There was no phone call, there was no courtesy, there was nobody who came to us to find out what we were doing, or no general information from us. I'd like to read what it says in the CC&R because that's what we're following. It says, notwithstanding any provision herein contained to the contrary, it shall be expressly permissible for an owner to construct or place a gazebo, pergola, or similar structure within the rear yard of a lot, so long as it is placed or constructed in conformance with setback height restrictions set forth in this declaration and applicable zoning. I read through the CC&Rs and our special one, our own, several times. There are no setback or height restrictions anywhere in the document, so that brings it back to zoning. We didn't need a building permit because our pergola was smaller than is required for a permit, but the vendor wanted to get one. That triggered the building program that the CC&R has established. The board needs to establish a policy regarding their building permit program. There's absolutely nothing in any document I can find that talks about their program except when they provided information to the board in 2021. This is a problem. The second letter,
Okay, your time is up.
okay, but I'd just like to finish. It'll only take a minute.
Wait,
We received-
wait, excuse me, sir.
All right.
Board, shall we allow him extra time? Yes, okay.
It's just brief. What the oversight is needed here too is because the second letter we received was after my wife took the requested information to CCNR. 2 weeks later, we received a follow-up second letter requesting the same thing. So they're not taking care of their own business as such, and they're overstepping the bounds of what they should be doing. They were complaint-driven. Now they're doing compliance. Now, there may be some reason for this, but the board has not established anything for the building permit program in the CCNR. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, with that, I will adjourn this meeting. Our next workshop meeting is October 11th, 2024, in this room. There will be a special meeting immediately following this to discuss the nomination of a replacement director for the spot vacated by Mr. Schlemmer's resignation. So I'm going to adjourn this meeting, and I'm going to move right into that special meeting to order. We have a quorum of the governing board, and the special meeting will be the approval of the governing board director appointee. The governing board candidate is John Chatton, and the reason that John is the candidate is that he was the fourth vote getter in our most recent election. So since he had several thousand votes, it made sense to me that he should be the first person considered for this position. So in this special meeting, I will make a motion that says, I move that the governing board accept the appointment of John Chatton as governing board director for a period of one term ending June 30th, 2025. He replaces governing board director Alan Schlemmer, who resigned his board position as of August 27th, 2024.
Seconded.
Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Director Hurley. With that, is there any discussion? No discussion?
Yes.
Yes, Tim. Director Hurley, sorry.
John has been a real asset to the community. He was on the search committee way back when we looked for a GM, when we hired Mr. Schwind. He's been on committees, and I think he's going to be a good addition to the board.
Thank you, Director Hurley. Any other comments? Okay, with that, then I will ask for a voice vote. I will start with Director Hurley. Yes is accepting John, Mr. Chatton as the replacement for Alan Schlemmer. No is that you do not accept him.
Yes.
Director Rhodes.
Yes.
Director Piaskowski.
Yes.
Director Novello.
Yes.
Director Grom.
Yes.
Director Horvath.
Yes.
Okay, it is unanimous. Welcome aboard, Director Chatton. The next step is that Director Chatton will be signed in. He'll take his oath, go through all of that process, and his first meeting will be next Thursday at our regular meeting, September 19th. Okay, thank you very much. Any other discussion with that? Any director comments?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I would like to clarify, in a sense, what you said, based upon the fact that he was the fourth vote getter in the most recent election. That is true. But the way the bylaws are written, that only really applies if the elected directors at that election did not start their term. Alan already has been 1 year into his term, so the fact that he happened to be the fourth vote getter is not relevant in this case.
Technically speaking, you are correct, but as in the decision-making process in terms of coming up with a nominee, that made this most sense to me, as opposed to picking somebody who is an unknown to the community.
Okay,
But you're absolutely right, it is irrelevant.
Okay, my question would be then, basically, we have no policy for filling a vacancy, such as once a vacancy is announced, we then announce it to the community and maybe give them 1 or 2 weeks to provide resumes so that they can be considered.
There is both a policy, but before that, there is a bylaw that describes all that entire process. The policy is only in effect if the bylaw fails to fill the seat.
Well, I don't quite see it that way, in the sense that in this case, the bylaw gives us the authority to appoint, but it's not relevant for the fourth person to be first considered. I think that in the case of filling a vacancy, the membership should be fully notified and given an opportunity to provide a
Really,
resume.
Rudy, that is, I'm sorry, Director Grom, that is the policy. As I said, the only reason I mentioned the fourth vote getter is to give some definition to the thought process as to how we came up with that, how I came up with that. But the policy is superseded by the bylaw. The bylaw gives us the exact process for how to handle a replacement. The policy is only effective when the bylaw fails to produce somebody to fill the seat.
But, so you're saying there is a policy?
There is a bylaw.
Bylaw gives you authority.
Yes, and the process. So so I would suggest that you familiarize yourself with the bylaw and the policy. This has been a process that has been in effect for some time and has worked successfully.
Okay, so to be clear, I understand the bylaw. You're saying there is a policy. I'd like to know where that exists. I have not seen that.
L9.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, Director Rhodes.
Could someone self-nominate themselves? Could have someone stood in the audience today and self-nominated them?
I don't believe the policy allows, or the bylaw allows for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with, Director Hurley.
Right, just for clarification, the bylaw says that the president has the ability, with the advice and consent of the board, to appoint, okay? That if that bylaw fails, then there's no agreement on who should be brought on, then it goes to the policy. So bylaws always take precedence over policies.
Okay, any other director comments? Okay, thank you. Any audience comments?
David Bennett, 137887. I just want clarification. He's being appointed to serve out Alan's term, that's why it's 1 year, whereas a new director would have a 2-year term.
He's filling out this year of Alan's term. So Alan, this would have been Alan's second year, and at the end of on June 30th, 2025, John's term will end, and then there will be an election to fill out the final year of Director Schlemmer's term, and that will be handled at that time.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, with that, I will adjourn this special meeting at 10:09 a.m.